Hello, everyone. We're going to have a Bible time first, and the topic is hoarding. I think it's a word that we don't typically use. Does anyone know what this word actually means, hoarding? Does anyone know? It means to gather, and it means to pile up, right? For the sake of collecting and not really using. So we'll kind of, go with that word. Do you guys eventually want to become a rich person? Raise your hands if you want to become a rich person. Oh, not that many. Oh, we see some hands in the back, all the high schoolers. Um, I have 3 kids, and this is the way that I think. Since I have 3 kids, hopefully, chances are that one of them turn out to be rich. So I am always telling my kids, hey, when you grow up and when you become rich, would you buy dad a car, a nice car? And my kids are saying, yeah, sure, right? And then I also ask them, hey, when you become rich, would you buy me a house? And one of them hesitate a little bit. I'm not gonna say who that is, but one of them is hesitating a little bit. So I'm really trying to brainwash them, right? Remember all the times that dad has been nice to you, and I hope that one of the 3 turn out to be rich, and they would actually I really mean it. They actually buy me a car and a house. And while most of us want to be rich, the Bible also gives us some serious warnings about rich people. The Bible doesn't say being rich is a bad thing, but it looks at what kind of rich person you are. But it raises this warning that the richer you get, the more difficult it gets for you to really have your faith in God. With that said, let's read James chapter 5, verse 1 together, 1, 2, 3. Look here, you rich people, weep and groan with anguish because of all the terrible troubles ahead of you. James is singling out the rich people. And imagine you are the rich person that lived in the same town as James, and at this point you are feeling really, really uncomfortable. And James is giving some terrible warnings for the rich people, the terrible troubles that are waiting for them. Why is that? Let's read verse 2 together. Your wealth is rotting away, and your fine clothes are moth-eaten rags. What happens if you leave something for a really, really long time? Anything with moisture tends to go bad. For example, at my house, we bought a box of orange, and I was trying to grab an orange, and obviously I wasn't looking, and I grabbed something, and then I felt my finger going through the peels, and I felt this mush feeling, and then I looked at it, and that's basically what I looked at. When we store things and we leave things for a long time, it tends to go bad. And same thing with clothes. Maybe in 샌디에고 we don't have as much bugs, but imagine you were living in the first century environment, and you put your clothes into a closet or into a warehouse, and there were many times these bugs. We call them moths, right? I've seen them maybe once or twice, but it's this flying insect-looking objects, and they kind of tend to eat away your clothes. And back in the days, this is what would happen to the rich people when they store up those wealth, treasures, and clothes. Why do you think they were storing up the wealth, treasures, and the clothes? Why? Because they had more than what they needed, right? What is a rich person? And I will simply define it as this: a person who has more than what they need and who has more than what they ever can use, without really tapping into it, without really using the luxury. Basically, if you have more than what you need and more than what you can normally use, you are a rich person. And James is saying, your wealth is just rotting away. Your fine clothes are being eaten by these moths, and some terrible things are waiting for you people. Let's look at verse 3. Your gold and silver are corroded. The very wealth you were counting on would eat away your flesh like fire. This corroded treasure you have hoarded, there's the word, will testify against you on the day of the judgment. Verse 3 is a really, really scary verse, right? It's saying that the corrosion is going to testify against you, rich people. Those people who have piled up things, not anything that they can use, but just, they were just saving for later use. And God seems to have really harsh warnings against those people. Now, do we save things? Do we save money and do we save things? We all do. Is saving a bad thing? Not necessarily. But why is this verse saying such bad things against saving and hoarding and storing up treasures? That is because at that time, what they save will be rotted away, will be eaten away. So they didn't really have a good use for saving. And at the same time, they also had those people who were poor. So from the poor people's perspective, you have these things to save, which is probably going to go bad. So why not give to the poor and why not share with the needy? And these rich people, these owners, they simply flat out refuse to do so. These are not people who are like, giving away and still, when they had extra, they were saving. These people refuse to look after their neighbors. In the first century world, your neighbors were basically your extended family, right? Our families are like so separated. I bet you guys don't even know your neighbors, but that was not the case in the biblical times. Everyone knew each other. Everyone knew how rich or how poor they were. Here you are closing your eyes to the needs of the people, and this verse is giving some warning. And on the last part of the verse, it says, the treasure you have hoarded will testify against you on the day of the judgment. Everyone say, on the day of judgment. When is the day of judgment? Does anyone know? Yes? When Jesus returns. Yeah, that's a very good answer, good possibility. What's the other possibility that, your judgment day being, what's the other possibility? When you die and see God face to face, you are going to have to give an account to God. And He is going to ask us one thing. What did you do with the things that I have given you? And these rich people were thinking, everything that I have is mine. I earned it, right? But when you get to see God on the day of judgment, God is going to ask you, what did you do with the things that I gave you? Do you see how the thought processes are very different? These rich people thought it was theirs, but God will probably say, no, I have entrusted you those things for the time being, and how did you use it? I don't know if you guys enjoy taking tests. Personally, I kind of enjoy studying, but I'm not a good test taker. I am really bad at taking tests, and 공부하다가 제가 이해하고 memorize 한 것도 저는 시험 보러 앉으면 다 까먹어요. I don't like taking tests, but in our lives, we are going to have one final exam. When you go take your test, when you are completely ready for the test, how do you feel? You feel pretty good about it, right? You just have to write down the answers that you have studied diligently for. But what if you did not study for the test? Then it's going to be a day of judgment for you, right? Even though it says the day of judgment really depends on what kind of life you lived here on earth. If you really thought about caring for the poor and thinking about your neighbors, your family members, people around you, and sharing and spreading about God's love and message, the day of the judgment is going to be the day of the biggest celebration. But if you're not ready for that, if you're living like the rich person, not really caring about the things going around in this world and the people next to you and friends around you, guess what? That day is truly going to become the day of judgment. Now, we all know that we are going to have a final test. Would you rather have it be a celebration day or a judgment day? And I believe that the answer should be a celebration day, and that depends on you guys and how we live. Especially as we are approaching the Christmas season, I want you guys to think about this. If Jesus were to ask you, how did you spend your Christmas season 2021, what kind of answer would you give? Would you say, oh, I received gifts, I enjoyed food, we traveled? Is that everything that you are going to say? In that case, it's going to be a day of judgment. But if we say, we cared for the poor, we made blankets, and we prayed for those people, and we gave to God, and we loved our friends, family, and neighbors, and we cared about our neighbors, God is going to say, hey, let's celebrate and let's party. All right. That's it. I'm going to dismiss you guys. So up until